Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
Europe's fertility crisis explained. So yesterday we did the video, why Europe doesn't build a skyscrapers. You guys can check that out, and my opinion was because their population is not exactly growing. I saw that on Reddit, but I couldn't remember, so I thought it would be interesting to see if this is true or I'm tripping. Let's see.
tripping.
This video is brought to you by Nebula. As you probably already know, much of the world is suffering through a demographic crisis. Fertility rates are falling, putting more pressure on public services and straining national budgets. Europe is no exception. According to the latest Eurostat data, the EU's fertility rate was about 1.53 in 2021, well below the so-called replacement rate of
1.5 is low. Yeah, because I think the requirement is 2, I guess he's going to say 2.1.
2.1. However, provisional data for 2022 and 2023 suggests that Europe's fertility rate is now falling at an unprecedented rate, and European governments are getting increasingly anxious about their demographic declines. So
that looks like Eastern Europe. This honestly looks like something, in a Lithuanian elementary school.
Where you have all the kids
yeah, something like, honestly, yeah, I don't know.
In this video, we're going to have a look at Europe's pre-existing demographic crisis, why it's gotten way worse in the last year or so, and whether there's anything European governments can do to fix it.
But, to be fair though, go back to the skyscraper video, they don't need those skyscrapers, the population is shrinking, well, not shrinking, but not exactly growing at the rate they need to be either.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, to understand this video, you're going to need a bit of context. To maintain a stable population, a country needs a fertility rate, that is the number of births per female, of 2.1. Low fertility rates, that is the number of births per...
The 0.1 is to counteract childhood mortality and premature deaths of some women. Okay, yeah, because how I remember, learning in high school, it was 2. That's why I thought it was 2, but I guess 2.1, and he says why 0.1. We didn't have that. I guess that's the new thing. Okay.
A female of 2.1. Low fertility rates, that is, a fertility rate significantly below the replacement rate.
Look at Asian countries, though. Well, see, fuck China at 1. They're gonna have a huge crisis in years to come. South Korea too. Japan is also no good. Wow.
The 2.1 are economically and politically stressful. Low fertility rates mean a smaller and, importantly, an older population. This means there will be less people of working age relative to pensioners, which means a smaller economically productive population sustaining a relatively larger non-productive population.
Yeah, and keep in mind, people live longer nowadays too.
This means 2 things. 1, a smaller economy overall, because you've got fewer working age people, and 2, a higher tax burden on those young people that are working. This is because, assuming you want to maintain your...
I don't know. There's never mind.
No, say what you want to say.
I was gonna say, because now there's a lot of younger population that's running into fast money, and I feel like they're contributing money earlier than what is typically the norm, where people are making a good salary. Because back in the day,
but what percentage of that is?
I don't know. That's why I'd be curious to know. Because we are seeing, I think the way to see that is to see how much they're stacking up in wealth. Like, what is the population of young adults who was able to purchase a home for the first time, as opposed to what it was back then.
Well, I don't know that statistic for Europe, but here in the States it's definitely shrinking. The people can't afford homes, the young people. So I don't think that's a thing. I think however many people that run into fast money, with the TikToks, Bitcoin, whatever, I do think there's a lot of, because of the inflation, a lot of people that work the low-paying jobs, they getting, well, again, I'm speaking for the States, I don't know in Europe, but the minimum wage is not rising as fast as the inflation is, so it kind of counteracts. I think it's still average out about the same.
Because what I'm seeing is everyone's in some sort of bubble, and I'm not seeing okay, where are these shortages? Where are these people who are able to afford? Where is the people who are not unable to purchase a home? Because it seems like everyone is buying up property.
What do you mean, where are these people who can buy a home?
Because it seems like everyone is buying up property. They're saying that it's a seller's market because they still have like offers that are put onto a home that's over asking.
Companies are buying those houses and they're renting. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that. You do have a valid
Because in
point.
Florida, we have an issue where there's a shortage of homes because everyone is trying to buy homes, not only for those who live in Florida, but from those coming out from different states too as well.
As you said, when those bubbles are different bubbles, that I do believe there's a large portion of people that can't afford to buy. I don't think, because I do see on Reddit people saying that they're forced to move out because you see a lot of people leaving Florida too because they can't afford it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people leaving.
Why they're leaving? Well, they can't afford it. So who's buying? Because the thing is, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's always been the problem in this country. But the video's about Europe. I don't know what to talk about here. Yeah, let's get to Europe.
Growing quality of public services, you need to make sure you're getting the same amount of tax per capita. But if you've got fewer working age people and more idle pensioners, then you need to tax those working age people more heavily to keep standards up. This is both bad economically, a higher tax burden will, at least in theory, discourage working, and bad socially, because it creates intergenerational unfairness. Most of the developed world, and actually quite a lot of the developing world, is struggling with low fertility rates. The US and Canada, for example, have both seen their fertility rates fall from about 4 in 1960 to about 1.8 and 1.5
I do think something to do
today.
with working and fertility, because now women are really, really taking up space in the workspace in higher positions. So when you can imagine to balance having a kid and work,
I think that is a factor. Now, well, I see multiple factors. Again, can't speak for the States only. I don't know in Europe. One factor is it's expensive to have kids. Times are hard, people are struggling, and to add another mouth to feed, it's expensive. I think that's the major factor. The second factor is, women are freer than they used to be. Some women don't want to have kids.
And there's not eligible bachelors.
Okay. And by the time they do decide to have kids, it might be too late, because some women do have a change of heart eventually. Might be too late to have kids, so I don't know, but there's multiple factors. Maybe he will get into it. Why? But that's what I would put as the factors that I can come up.
And lots of countries in Southeast Asia, including perhaps most notably China, have fertility rates even lower. The latest data from China, for example, implies a fertility rate of 1.09, which is pretty insane, especially when you consider that China had a fertility rate of about 6 in the 1960s. Anyway, like everyone else, Europe is also struggling with a below replacement fertility rate. According to the latest Eurostat data, which runs until 2021, the European Union's average fertility rate was 1.53, which is slightly higher than what it was in 2020 during the pandemic, when it fell to 1.5. The countries with the lowest fertility rates are Spain, Italy and Poland, while the highest fertility rates are in Sweden, France, Ireland and parts of Central and Eastern Europe.
Interesting. So the wealthier countries, healthier and I don't know, Romania, is that Moldova or Romanian flag? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know about Czechia, what's up with that, but yeah, interesting.
Right. Now, this might not sound too bad. After all, it's somewhere between Canada and the US, and well above places like China and Japan. However, the continent-wide data masks the stark decline in certain European countries, which have been offset by increases in fertility in Central and Eastern Europe. There's an interesting divide in Europe here. As the graph shows, fertility rates are falling across Northern and Western Europe, but actually rising in Central and Eastern Europe, as well as Portugal. But perhaps more worryingly, provisional data for 2022 and 2023 suggests that the increase in 2021 was mainly because fertility was artificially suppressed during the pandemic, when Europeans couldn't really have kids, and fertility rates have dropped precipitously since. Not all countries have released their data yet, which is why we don't have Eurostat data, but those that have saw steep declines. France, for example, has seen its fertility rate fall by over 10%, with fewer babies so far in 2023 than ever before, which would imply a fertility rate of about 1.68. Similarly, Germany's fertility rate fell from 1.58 in 2021 to 1.46 in 2022, and is expected to fall even further to 1.4 in 2023, driven by steep declines in German cities. Berlin and Munich, for example, both have fertility rates of about 1.2 at the moment. The Netherlands' fertility rate fell from 1.62 in 2021 to about 1.46 in 2023.
I wonder if people choose not to have kids because like they don't want to, whatever, or they can't afford to have kids because that's an important difference. If people don't want to have kids, then I mean, what can you do? You know, you can't force people to have kids. But if they can't afford, then that's a problem that's fixable. You know, governments have to do something about it.
In fact, at least 9 European countries, including Iceland, the Czech Republic, Albania, all the Nordics and all the Baltics, are expected to see their fertility rates fall by at least 20% from 2021 to 2023. And many of the European countries with stable fertility rates are only avoiding decline because they're so low in the first place. Spain and Italy, for example, have relatively stable fertility rates, but they're both already well below the European average, at about 1.2 and 1.25 respectively. The problem has become so acute that many European governments have started implementing policies actively designed to increase their fertility rate, known as pronatalist policies. Hungary and Poland first implemented pronatalist policies in the 2000s, after their fertility rates collapsed in the 90s.
Yeah, we need the policies here too, man. 1.8 is not
Hungary now allows for a total of up to 3 years of paternal leave, with some wage replacement, and Poland's Family 500 Plus programme provides a monthly cash benefit to all families for each child until the age of 18.
Wow.
Sweden implemented tacitly pronatalist policies in the early 2010s, including an impressive 18 months of paid leave for each parent. And Giorgia Meloni has been actively trying to boost birth rates in Italy, railing against what she's described as the demographic winter. Worryingly for all these politicians, history suggests that it's very hard to reverse demographic decline. Despite their generous pro-family policies, fertility rates are still below replacement rates in all the countries we just mentioned, and decades of pronatalist policymaking have done little to stem the demographic decline in South Korea, Singapore and Japan. The most obvious solution is
China went from 6 to drop all the way down to 1.
They installed the one-child policy, that's why.
Mm-hmm. I know that.
Oh, no, well, okay. So, it's not...
I'm not on the rock.
No, so, I mean, it's not crazy that because they have the policy. I just don't know how you revert that now. Because that's going to be real hard.
Because it was also preferred to have a boy.
Right, yeah. And I remember, we learned about it in school. It was crazy.
Migration, especially of young people, but this has proved increasingly controversial in Europe, and even then, it's not clear that this is a sustainable solution, both because fertility rates in the rest of the world are also falling fast, and because, after at most a couple of generations, immigrants usually end up converging to their new country's fertility rates. If governments are serious about reversing Europe's demographic decline, however, then they should start by...
Okay, I guess a policy would be allowing more immigrants to come. That brings it's not fertility rates, but the population does rise a little bit.
Looking at housing. There's good evidence that expensive housing isn't helping. In general, expensive housing means more young adults still live at home, and there is, unsurprisingly, a negative correlation between the age you move out and the number of kids you end up having. Ultimately, there's no quick fix for Europe's demographic decline, but as the issue becomes ever more pressing, European governments would be well advised to look at housing. Now, it seems that if you've watched a full video on Europe's fertility crisis, then you're interested in European news. Well, we discuss all sorts of European news, including recent...
I guess he's done with that. I wish he went into a little bit the reasoning why. Maybe there's like a poll people took or something,
Can you look at the comments?
Because I want to understand why. Because if people don't want to have kids, then I mean, what can you do? You just can't force people to do anything about it. But if it's expensive, then governments keep saying what they do to bare minimum to fix it. I would say the problem is the younger generation are no more able to own anything. Securing a good job is harder. So I guess marriage is unstable. That is also a problem. I feel like the outlook about marriage changed.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems cost of living. It's not that people don't want to, it's just expensive. Well, governments have to figure something out then. If it's about money, figure it out.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord, and as always, share as much kindness as possible.